Okay, so we're gonna jump into this real quick because Minneapolis, and maybe like your city, a lot of people are talking about, oh my God, crime is at an all-time high. Oh my goodness, how did it get like this? Now, there's several reasons why this is happening. And a lot of people want to look straight at the source and immediately engage with one of the four horsemen, which is condemnation, defensiveness, criticism, or stonewalling. But condemnation is one of it, is the main thing that people are utilizing. By the way, thank you so much for watching. I'm Tucson Morrison. This is the Social Science Club. Totally failed to give an intro there. Anyways, we're going to go into people complaining about crime being at an all-time high in your city. And it's happening right now in Minneapolis as well. But the reasons behind it, getting at the core of it is important. Get at the core of it. Now, on the surface, news and major media papers will say, crime, crime, crime. And the idea is what's being promoted is that evil is just occurring out of nowhere, and it's almost like Ghostbusters. There's just, people doing evil things just for the sake of doing it. That's not the case. When we look at survivalism, when we look at a hierarchy of needs, if you don't have a roof over your head, food to eat, and a warm place to be, you will take certain measures just to get those things, which would be called survivalism, which would then be branded by major media as crime, or Crime Stopper groups on Facebook that would just label it as bad people. Anyways, getting down to it, in my city of Minneapolis, the biggest complaint is, oh my goodness, the cops are underfunded and they're understaffed. These riots have destroyed the city after the MPD murdered George Floyd. I mean, how do we ever get back to normal? Here's the deal. Nobody defunded the police, okay? The Minneapolis Police Department has more cash on hand now than they did before they murdered George Floyd. And you can source that out of an article in Mother Jones and also the Fox 9 and Star Tribune. And the other thing is that after George Floyd was murdered, there was so much vitriol directed globally at the Minneapolis Police Department that over 300 officers left, just gone. They received lucrative pensions. They cited post-traumatic stress disorder for leaving, and it's not to minimize that, but that happened. That happened. They understaffed themselves. And then going along with, that was a loud noise, going along with the funding, the Minneapolis Police Department has doled out, just wait for it, $111 million in settled lawsuits in less than 15 days after they murdered George Floyd. I'm gonna say that one more time. The MPD murdered George Floyd, and then within the 2 weeks and a day after, 15 days, they racked up a $111 million tab. How did that happen? How does that happen? Well, first off, look at the history of the Minneapolis Police Department. Look at the history of the St. Paul Police Department. St. Paul Police Department is one of the most lethal police departments in the state. It is the most lethal police department in the state of Minnesota, and one of the most lethal in the country. So their proclivity to jump to deadly force is through the roof already. Minneapolis Police Department is kind of on the same tip, except they're a lot more sloppy with it. You can't, from what I heard, is that they couldn't pay entry bonuses to newcomers that were going to sign on with the MPD for them to actually come here. People would rather go to the suburbs, rather go to St. Paul, because the culture in the Minneapolis Police Department is so bad, it is so upside down that folks don't even want to work for the MPD. So you have that. They understaff themselves, and then they have a culture that's been legacied up to now that is so backwards and crooked that nobody even wants to work for them. So there's that, and they did that to themselves. As for the money, Mayor Fry has rubber stamps, signed and approved millions of dollars that have gone to the MPD since they murdered George Floyd. And they have more cash on hand now than they did before they murdered George Floyd. So we can't sit here and say that they are underfunded. And I'll put some articles below that you can check out and read up on that. And it's not to indict the MPD, but it's to just shut down that whole argument of, wow, they're underfunded. But then we also have to go and look at what has the MPD done to the city of Minneapolis. So is there a better way that they could have handled the entirety of the uprising? Yeah, definitely. Maybe shot less lethal, maybe not shoot less lethal rounds or rubber rounds at people. Linda Tirado, Soren and Jaleel Stallings all were shot in the face. Now they were shot in the eye. Jaleel Stallings fractured his eye socket. Soren and Linda Tirado, they lost an eye. And so they had to settle with those people. And Soren was just protesting peacefully and just standing with folks. And Linda Tirado was a reporter, a journalist. So using less lethal or non-lethal rounds and taking out people's eyeballs then result in this $111 million tab that they racked up in 2 weeks. So who pays for that? You guessed it. We do. The city of Minneapolis. So when we look at the police getting defunded, that's not the case. What's actually happened is the city has been defunded. And now they're looking at, I believe they're going to be in $94 million in the negative by the end of 2022. So when you hear people talk about, oh my goodness, the crime is so high, why is this happening? Well, when your city's infrastructure has not served the people, destroyed the trust, murdered people, and then signed off on said police brutality and not prosecuted those people, well, now you're creating a situation where nobody trusts the cops, nobody wants to be a cop in the city, and if anything is going down in the city, cops are then going to do what? They're going to be apprehensive to do their job, which is what happened with the Minneapolis Police Department. In Reuters, they wrote, I think it was called the hands-off patrol, where they just stopped answering calls. Because the whole point was, oh, you don't like us because we murdered George Floyd? Well, see how life is without us. And so with that, it then creates this sinkhole where the police are needed. And when you look at everything that's going on, why is crime so high, look no further than the actual police department in your city and the mayor that's possibly rubber stamping all of the behavior that they're doing. And I would just encourage everybody to get into the knit and grit of your local politics. And again, this isn't to, I know some people won't like me saying this, but to indict individual officers, but it's to indict the entire culture of it. The institution of it is crooked and backwards as it is. And so the funding that goes into that, and the complacency and the passivity and just letting officers do whatever and take carte blanche, and fire at protesters or just shoot people or do whatever they want and still get back on the job, that costs so much money because that person then will settle a civil suit that you pay for in your city. And then if the officer says, you know what, I'm feeling really stressed out about this, I'm so stressed out that I shot this person, I'm gonna take leave. Then you're paying for their leave as well. And one of the officers that shot at Jaleel Stallings is making $10,000 a month by not being an officer anymore. Again, $10,000, I believe, from one officer, $7,000 for another one, and $5,000 for another one, which goes to a combined $22,000 for 3 officers that shot at Jaleel Stallings. And everybody's paying that tab on the monthly, as well as Jaleel Stallings' lawsuit settlement, which is $1.5 million. So when you look at the money, when people talk about why is crime so high, look no further than the money in the police department that's at play in your city. All right, that's all for now. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you found this video of value, please click subscribe or like on the on somewhere around here. It's somewhere here, right? Okay, we'll see you in the next one. Bye.